Opinionator, where I give my thoughts on various topics.
Oh my God, who the hell cares?
So sit back, relax, and get ready for my 2 cents. Good Saturday morning to everybody here on the Nick Harrison podcast. This is the Opinionator, episode 3, today on Saturday, September 30th, 2017. Now, I'm going to rant here in something that I've experienced myself, so I'm going to relay my thoughts and opinions to everybody listening to this. What I'm going to talk about is the false promises that everybody promises you about college. If you have not been to college, you probably cannot relate, although some of this does apply to high school also, but mainly college. I've finished college, obviously, with a bachelor's degree that I do not use in my job now. This is a more and more common thing. Obviously, there's a lot of companies these days that want you to have a college degree, even though it doesn't necessarily matter to them what the degree is in, what your focus of study is, what your concentration is. They just want you to have a college degree. They'll train you on the job, once you get hired. They just want to see the discipline of you being able to go to school and get a college degree. But there are some promises that society offers to us or promises us that don't always pull through. You hold up your end of the deal, but the workforce and the employers out there in the world do not hold up their end of the deal. The first promise, false promise of college, is that when you get done with college, you will be fully educated. Now, if you're like me, you went through college, you did, I'm not going to say the bare minimum, but you did what you had to do. And I'm not going to say, what that may be, but you did what you had to do to get good grades. You did what you had to do to pass, to make it to class on time. Everybody struggles with college. You have homework and a life outside of college. A lot of people have jobs outside of college, a family or whatever. But you go to college and you will be educated. That's what's always promised. And with you skimping by through college, you're not always educated when you get out. If you are, you're educated on the BS, like how to figure out the Pythagorean theorem, which unless you are an architect or unless you're in a job that specifically requires geometrical knowledge, you're not always going to use that. That's just an example. But they say when you get out of college, you'll be fully educated. But a lot of people get out of college that are not ready to go to work. They're not trained on job skills and work ethic. They're trained on textbook smarts. So they say you'll be educated. That's a false promise. You get out, you're not ready to go to work. Education, of course, obviously begins in school. But self-education, self-taught lessons, life lessons, the secret to life, all this kind of stuff, on-the-job training, that kind of stuff, self-education lasts a lifetime. So yes, education does begin in school, but it doesn't end there. You're not fully educated when you get out of college. You are just starting the learning process. Yeah, so there's that. The second false promise of college is that when you get out, you will land a job. Now, in a lot of cases, this is totally true. You get out of college, you have a job fair, you go to a school where people scout you for work, to be a good employee, whatever, and you get out and you get a job, period. Yeah, done. Cool. But that's not always the case with a lot of people. A lot of times you get out of college, you apply for jobs, you try to get, you inquire about different things, whether that's through networking or online or whatever, and you get rejected over and over and over and over. And the bad thing about this is that you might have a college degree, which yes, may help you, and that's what people promise, that having a college degree will get you a job, but you get out and every job requirement says you must have experience. We want 5 years of experience in marketing. We want minimum of 3 years in management skills or whatever. And you don't always have that when you get out of college. You have the smarts to do it, the education, but you do not have the experience that everybody's looking for. So you will land a job. That's the second false promise of college. A lot of people, when they get out of college, are not equipped to enter the workforce. And this could be a sign that potentially the school system has failed. I'm not saying that about all colleges. I'm not saying that about all public school systems, but a lot of them indeed have failed, or maybe not have failed, but have not, met the, have not raised their expectations to the same level of society and more specifically the workforce. So the second false promise of college is that you will land a job. Not always true. Okay. The third false promise of college is that you will make connections. Now, in a lot of cases, this is true. If you're a good college student, I suppose you should make connections, right? And a lot of people do make those connections, but not everybody. Not everybody wants to make connections. For me, for example, I wanted to go to school and get the hell out and come home. I didn't want to stay. I didn't want to join, I didn't want to live that college experience. I wanted to be done with school because I hate school. If you do make connections, a lot of times you make party buddies, party friends, but nothing more. They're not true, legitimately connections. They're just buddies to drink with, to hang out with, to party with, whatever. And in nowadays, a lot of people use social media, and a lot of people will claim that I use social media. I'll use social media to network. Well, no, you don't. You use social media to creep and to find out and to post your life, your hardships or whatever on there. But that does not count as making a true connection in most cases. Now, some places it will. LinkedIn, for example, is a good place to make professional connections, but it will not always happen. So social media does not count. And a lot of times making those connections, to add to my theory of being a false promise, is that a lot of times school credentials, I went to such and such university, I have a such and such degree, whatever. A lot of times school credentials do not mean enough to people. They don't care. They'd rather have that experience I was talking about earlier or whatever. So school credentials are not always enough to mean something. Okay, so you will make connections. That is the third false promise of college. The fourth false promise of college is that you cannot live without it. This is an obvious false promise, again, for obvious reasons. Many people in the world, many famous and rich and very successful or financially successful people in the world have made something very big of themselves, have made big businesses, or have become a big investor, or have lots of money, all this stuff without going to college, a lot of them without graduating high school. They got their GED and that's it. But a lot of us, myself included, have the pressure of their parents. Their mother and father want them to go to college, so you're pressured into going to college. They always tell you, you won't get a good job unless you go to college. So the false promise is that you cannot live without it. What people fail to realize, I think, sometimes is that life skills and handy skills, trade skills, whatever you want to call it, that means something too. So not just because you don't go to college doesn't mean you're a dumbass. You can still be an educated person, just not necessarily with the textbook stuff, but more of the hands-on, the handy stuff, the life skill type stuff. Again, there's many successful people out there that have self-taught knowledge or have learned something elsewhere without going to college, that they are able to be very successful, make a lot of money, do everything else they want to do without going to college. Going to college, of course, will help you, but it does not mean that you will necessarily lose opportunities without a college degree. People saying you cannot live without college is a false promise, false statement. The fifth and final false promise of college that I have here from this episode of The Opinionator is that you will be rich. I've heard all my life that if you do not go to college, over your working 30-year career, you will make $1.2 million. And I've heard that it's the other way around. If you do go to college, you will make $2.1 million. So you will literally double your income if you go to college. Not only that, but you always hear people say, if you go to college, you will be rich. You will make at least $50,000 a year, $50,000 a year coming out of college, blah, 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 blah. And frankly, that is false. You will not always do that. You will not always make that kind of money straight out of college, especially if you decide to use your degree, something that you went to college for because you're passionate about, but not necessarily is helpful in the workforce. Not only that, but obviously college is very expensive. So you get out of college and you're stuck paying off debt. So what's really worth it? Do you want to go and start out at a job making $50,000 a year if you're able to land that job with a college degree, but you're paying $20,000 a year in college debt? Or would you rather go to straight, don't go to college and make, $30,000 a year and have zero debt, and you're making the same amount of money as you would with a college degree, making $50,000 a year. So, anyways, you don't have to listen to anything I just said, but if you do, I appreciate it. And those are my theories, my 5 false promises of college. So, number 1 is that you will be educated, false statement. Number 2, you will land a job, not always true. So, I'm going to label that as a false statement. Number 3, you will make connections. Of course, that's not always true. Number 4, you cannot live without a college degree. And number 5, you will be rich. That's all I have on this episode of The Opinionator today on Saturday, September 30th. I hope you enjoy your weekend and join me on Monday as I continue the Nick Harrison podcast. Thanks for listening, and I will be back soon.